everybody, man? This is your boy Darnell, man. I want to welcome you to another episode here on AZI TV. I'm with the man, the myth, the legend, my man, Pastor Steele, man. What's up, brother?
Man, life was good.
Man, I love it, brother.
In the pandemic, God is still good.
Man, brothers, man. So I'm glad, man. I know you busy. For you guys that don't know, he's on a sabbatical, and I'm not mad at the brother. Pastors of his stature need to take that. You know what I mean? Sleep a little bit. So before we get into any deep questions, man, let the people know where you come from. How'd you get here? Are you from here? Just who you are.
Well, I was born in Oakland, California.
Okay.
Moved here when I was 5 years old.
Got it.
So basically born in Oakland, California, but raised here.
Okay.
Went to high school here. Graduated from Carl Hayden High School in
Got it.
1991.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I was all Arizona Informant quarterback in 1990.
Okay.
So I got a relationship with the Arizona Informant.
Got it.
Even
Okay.
going back to high school, they would do articles on me and
Okay.
whatnot, because I was a quarterback here.
Okay.
And back in the 90s and whatnot. And so, but no, I've been here since I was 5 years old. My mom got here by way of Arkansas, and my dad got here by way of Louisiana. So they both graduated from Phoenix Union.
Oh, got it.
So they, we got a lot of roots here. A lot of roots.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, Phoenix Union is not around anymore.
Right.
I think it turned into Central High School, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it did not. It turned into something else, I think.
Okay.
But I can't call what it is, but it's not Central.
Okay. See,
Yeah.
I'm throwing off. I'm talking to an historian in the building. You know what I mean?
Because I used to play against Central, the Central Bobcats.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar, of course. That's right there by Brophy Prep.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I actually went to Central.
Oh, did you? Okay.
One of the worst football and basketball teams you'll ever play against.
Oh, man.
I had friends who used to play for other high schools that said when they knew they were playing us, they wouldn't even practice hard.
Are you serious? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Well, when I was coming up, they were pretty decent in the late 80s, early 90s.
That's when the passion was there, though.
Sure. They had some good athletes come out of there at that time.
Okay,
Yeah.
so for you guys who don't know, I'm actually friends with Pastor Steele on Facebook, right? And I seen a Christmas present or a birthday present that was given to you by your wife and kids.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of explain what this present was?
I'm trying to think which one.
It has something to do with the Letterman.
Oh, yeah. They bought. I lost my Letterman jacket.
Got it. Okay.
And my wife surprised me and bought me another Letterman jacket and had all my accolades put on there and whatnot.
Right.
And so that blew me away, because I've been out of high school now. Next year, it will be 30 years. 30 years.
Brother.
Can you believe it? That's a whole
Brother.
lifetime.
I wasn't even here, brother. That's man.
Yeah, 30 years ago. So, but yeah, that messed me up.
Okay.
Bible says in Ephesians 3:20, God can do exceedingly abundantly above
Yeah.
more than you can imagine or think. That was definitely an Ephesians 3:20 moment for me, because I've been missing my jacket.
Yeah.
So to see it pop back up, if you will, and back then I was probably a large. I'm a double X now.
So they had to
give me the double X.
Mikey had to be like, yeah, I love it and all, but let me go get this.
Right.
That's hilarious.
Yes,
So
sir.
when I seen that, it did say the Arizona Informant, so you have one right here.
Exactly.
I'm not stalking. I just like to do my homework. You know what I'm saying? I do my due diligence.
That's what's up.
Now you're pastoring at Kingdom in the Valley.
Kingdom in the Valley Christian Church. I started, matter of fact, believe it or not, we'll be 16 years old on January the 2nd.
Wow.
And so we're ecstatic about that. And we started, literally, my wife, my kids, I had called a meeting with them and told them that I felt called, the pull of God to start a church. Didn't have any money. I asked like 5 pastors to help me out. All of them said no. They kind of wanted to watch and see, if you will. And then in due season, they would sow as we were kind of in transition.
Right.
And so I looked at my wife and I told her, I need your whole paycheck, baby. The whole check, a little bit over $1,300.
Wow.
And that's how we started. January 2nd, 2005. And here we are 16 years later. God has blessed us. We got about 10,000 people that claim us.
Wow.
And before the pandemic, we were a couple thousand on a Sunday.
Wow.
Where now most people, of course, watch online. Yeah. But God has still been good. Even in this pandemic, we've seen God do some phenomenal things, even in 2020, in spite of everything that's going on.
Yeah. Now, and this whole pandemic how challenging for you, not as a pastor, but as a person, as a man in this particular situation, how has it been challenging to you?
I lost my dad back in January of this year.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to mourn that. I'm still mourning that 11 months later. And then my wife wakes me up 7-8 weeks later in March and says, hey, honey, they just did a thing on the news that we're not going to be able to go in our building next week and have church because of the pandemic.
Wow.
And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So my point in bringing that all up is that I was mourning the fact that I lost my dad. Now I'm mourning the fact that I lost my church.
Right.
So I had to climb behind the pulpit, and our place can hold almost 1,400 people.
Right.
Had to jump in there behind the pulpit and preach to 3 people, my wife and like 2 or 3 of my kids.
Wow.
And so that was different, preaching in an empty building and mourning the fact that my congregation couldn't be there, because Jeremiah 3:15, he said, I'll give you shepherds after my own heart.
Right.
That will feed you knowledge and understanding. I'm a true shepherd. I love people, and I love pouring into people. I love giving my courage away to them. And I was more of a butts and seats pastor, more than eyeballs, of course. Okay. But I had to because before the pandemic, I had no idea how many people were watching us online. Really didn't care, because my main focus was the people in the congregation. Wow. So I had to kind of shift my mindset, because now the landscape of ministry is changing. So we were trying to get as many eyeballs locked in as possible. You know what I'm saying, to keep this thing moving. And we've been blessed. Even this year, my daughter was sharing with me some numbers. We've had about 347 new people join our church this year, even in the middle of a pandemic, because now we got people watching all over the world now. Right. We got people watching. We have some people just joined recently from Montana. You know what I'm saying? Montana. And there's more black bears than black people.
Right. Come on now.
Saying?
Some of the bears probably on there.
And so we had white couples, because we're big about 1 Corinthians 9:22. Paul said, be all things to all people to save some. And so we've been intentional from day one to be all things to all people. And so the makeup of our church, we're 26% other. Okay. So we're not just a black church. We've been able to touch Hispanics and Caucasians and Asians, and the list goes on. And so we're grateful for that.
And I love it, man, because I've actually been to your church a couple times. Okay. Man. And I've known people that go there, and it's nothing but great testimony, man, about you. Because the thing is, I'm more of a relationship type person, right? Got it. I don't care about titles. I don't care. Sure. I respect your position, but I don't put you on a pedestal because of your title. Got it. I want to know I want to know what that thing in your heart is doing. Like, that's where I'm at. So, got it. I do my rapport on a lot of pastors and a lot of churches, because I just don't want to say, oh, I know this person. Got it. But I want to say, I know this person. Got it. Right. So I can respect you, because there's nothing but greatness that's came from the mouths of people about your church and about you, man, about your wife, about your kids. I've seen your kids online preaching. Sure. Your son, I think he's going to be taking over.
He will. Amen. 'Cause I don't plan on doing this forever.
Man, you need some retirement. So now you're in sabbatical. So let's go back to your father passing. Yeah. Who, as a pastor, everybody cries on your shoulder. Everybody leans on you. Sure. Everybody, they pull from you. But who do you have to pull from?
Well, when I lost my dad, the first person I called was Bishop T.D. Jakes. Okay. And when I tell you, he helped walk me through this, because he's lost both of his parents. Right. So he's not a novice when it comes to, he's been there, done that. And so he helped me walk through it, even before my dad died, when we knew, because the doctor sent him home and told him he had less than 30 days, and he died 37 days later. So even before my dad passed, Bishop was helping me walk through that. And so Proverbs 11:14 says, in a multitude of counsel, there's safety. And where there's no counsel, the Bible says people fall. And so I think it's important to be connected to people that you're accountable to. And like you said, I got to have a shoulder I can lean on. Right. And not only Bishop Jakes, but there's another bishop named Bishop Edgar Van out of Detroit, who's a really good friend of mine. And another Bishop Hawkins, Felton Hawkins out of Newport News, Virginia. Yeah, I know. These are guys that have been mentors that I was able to call and lean on during that time. Okay. And so, because I don't believe that, I always say even the Lone Ranger needed Tonto. Starsky needed Hutch, and Michael Jordan needed Scottie Pippen. I don't think you can make it in this journey by yourself. Even Ecclesiastes 4:9 says 2 is better than 1. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right, it's important to have people in your corner. And I always say, run from people that are a liability, because some people have lied about their ability.
Come on, preach. You already give me a sermon now.
Get connected to people that can be an asset, and that really celebrates you, as a human being. And so I've been blessed to have Bishop Jakes in my life and other mentors and whatnot.
So how have they been walking you through the whole pandemic as a pastor? So not, out of the personal life, how did they, did they give you advice on, let's see, how to operate church and this and that and other through this whole pandemic?
Absolutely. I've done several this year, phone calls, Zoom calls with Bishop T.D. Jakes and other pastors as well. And, because obviously the landscape of ministry has changed because we haven't been having in-person services.
Right.
Like I was sharing with you earlier, we did do it from October 4th to December the 13th. But after those 10, 11 weeks, I kind of felt like we needed to shut it back down because we are right now second in the nation,
right?
As far as, the coronavirus, right behind California.
Right.
And the last thing I want to be recognized as a reckless leader, so
yeah.
So I made a decision to kind of put a pause on things, whatnot, because I'm a people person and I want to be more hands-on, but I know at the same time I have a responsibility to protect my flock. And that was some of the things that Bishop Jakes was relaying to me and several other younger pastors, that we don't want to be reckless when it comes to tending to God's sheep.
Right.
So we have to just kind of sit back and kind of wait for the dust to settle, if you will. And he made a comment. He said, the new sexy is safe.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
On now.
So, you know what I'm saying? Because some people might think, well, it's sexy to have 3 and 4 services in the middle of a pandemic. And I've seen some churches do that with no mask, and 69 people got infected at a church that I know of with the virus.
Right.
They didn't put in some certain things in motion, if you will, to prohibit things from happening. And that's the one thing that we did. We had hand sanitizers everywhere. We had to wear a mask. And thank God during those 11 weeks, we only had one person that didn't want to wear their mask, and we had to turn them away.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we want to be in order, not out of order. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure we don't spread the germs and spread the virus, if you will.
Right.
So we had some precautions in place and whatnot. But back to what you were saying, it's been a blessing to learn and glean from guys that have been doing this, because I'm only 16. So it's good to have guys around you that's been doing it for 30, 40 years. Because as a young pastor, you can get a little gun-ho and just want to keep going. Go. And they're like, wait, hold on. That's kind of God's repositioning things. And it won't always be like this. No. We'll eventually get back to our normal in Jesus' name. So it's good to have mentors in your ear that speak along those lines.
Okay, so who does your youth ministry? Who's over?
My youth ministry is a couple. We moved here from Minnesota.
Okay.
Their names are Calvin and Dominique. Matter of fact, my son was over it for probably 6 years. And then he came to me one day and he said he kind of felt like God was releasing him from being over the youth, that he wanted to be the executive pastor.
Oh, wow.
And that threw me for a loop, because at the time, my wife was the executive pastor.
Okay.
But just being transparent, he kind of got an opportunity to see how me and my wife were clashing.
Right.
Because my wife, being a woman, is more of a nurturer.
Right.
And so when it was time to fire somebody, she couldn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
She's like, let's just nurture them through it.
Yeah.
And we're like, this person has become more of a liability than an asset.
Yeah.
And they haven't been as competent like we thought they would be. And so it would be hard for her to pull the trigger. So we felt like, let's shift you back to women's ministry. Let's shift Isaiah, my oldest son is 28 years old, into the executive position. And so now if something pop off, I can go off on him. I don't have to go home with him. You understand?
I understand. Like, oh, you want to step? Okay, cool. I'm going to see you at home. Don't worry.
But the wife, though, I got to see her at home. She calls it the ungodly trinity, because I'm her boss, I'm her pastor, and her husband.
Man.
And so you got to know which one is speaking at all times.
Man, brother.
And that's why everybody's not wired to be a first lady.
No.
Because you got to know if that's your husband talking, your boss, or your pastor.
Man.
You know what I'm saying?
Man.
So it was just best to kind of move her out of there and move my son in there. Matter of fact, this January will be 3 years that he's been in that position. And he's doing an excellent job. We run probably, I want to say we're close to 30 employees if you include musicians and custodians and things of that nature that are on our payroll. So somebody has to oversee them. And it's best for me not to. Me being the visionary. You don't want to be a visionary and a manager. You can only do that for so long. You got to have people that are competent to you can delegate to kind of handle those areas of ministry.
Because I mean, you see, because I just became a licensed youth and college pastor.
Oh wow, okay.
So I'm over there at the Message Church under Bishop Rick Garrett and Sister Deborah.
Good man. I've been on him for years.
So and one thing that I've always said when I go there is I'm here to serve.
Amen.
Because I don't ever want to put extra stress on the leadership.
That's good.
And so right now, because we're the pandemic with us, got the numbers like this. You know what I mean? So we're back in service, but you got RSVP
Got
come
it.
into service.
Okay.
Just because
Sure.
we don't want to pack it out.
Right.
Like there's
sense.
other churches out here, not saying no names, but
Right.
that haven't stopped having service at all.
Right.
You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah, I
And
know
so-
some. Yeah. And
So I just want to, like, with your mindset, I always want to respect the people,
Sure.
especially my youth in college.
right.
I always want to give them a safe place to come to. Right now, I'm preaching online like you are,
Got it.
because they're not really coming in as like I
Sure.
would, but they have to answer to parents and
Right.
travel with that. So how has it been with your guys' youth ministry? What has been kind of the feedback you've been getting with that?
Well, they've been actually going online as well.
Okay.
Our youth pastors, Dominique and Calvin, again, we moved them in from Minnesota.
Okay.
And they've been doing a wonderful job. They're actually on payroll.
Mhm.
They not only oversee the not young adults, but the teenagers and the children.
Okay.
And so they have things that they upload online so that the children can watch and the youth can watch as well.
Okay.
And so from what I'm hearing, so far so good. The participation we would like for it to be better.
Yeah.
But it's
yeah.
hard because now we live in a day and time where there's so many distractions.
Man.
You know what I'm saying? And I miss the in-person, church. And we'll get back there. We did like anything. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that He's God."
Man.
Sometimes that word "be still" means to be undisturbed,
Mhm.
because we know when it's all said and done, this is going to pass over, and we'll get back. Now, my personal opinion, it might not be 2021. We might have to wait to 2022.
Yeah.
We're believing God for this vaccine to work.
Mhm.
And for those that didn't know, I actually had corona.
Oh, really?
Back in June of this year.
Oh, wow.
Man, that thing hit my family, hit all of us, my kids.
Wow.
Everybody lost their taste, they smell, the whole nine.
That was maybe a bad smelling house. You
Man.
just did not know.
Listen, it was bad. it was a bad, not a good situation. But the blessing was it knocked us down, but it didn't knock us out, because
Right.
we're still here.
Mhm.
And I held on to Psalm 91:7. 1,000 will fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. And
Mhm.
God sustained us. I couldn't preach for a couple of weeks. And it's interesting. My son had it before me. My 28-year-old,
Mhm.
he had it. And as he was coming out of it, I finally got it.
Mhm.
And so I'm preparing my sermon, and I just had no strength. And I just text him my sermon. I said, "Man, I need you to preach this tomorrow." I said, "You go ahead, and if you want to add to it or take away, because normally I give him the liberty to preach whatever.
Yeah.
Lord, Holy Spirit puts on." I said, "But man, just preach this tomorrow." And so I was out for a couple of weeks, and he filled in for me, and whatnot. But yeah, my wife got hit with it, lost her taste smell. My 25-year-old daughter,
Wow.
my 27-year-old daughter,
Wow.
my 21-year-old son. The only one that didn't get it is my 23-year-old son.
You better
And
watch
at the
out.
time, he was in Virginia
Okay.
playing for Liberty University.
Yeah, I seen that,
Yeah,
man. I seen that.
So he's the only one that didn't get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is he still going to Liberty or no?
He graduated from Liberty last week, believe it or not.
Oh, wow, okay.
He opted out because of Corona.
Mhm.
Opted out, and matter of fact, he decided to leave Liberty since he got his degree. He got his 4-year bachelor's degree. He is going to do a 5th year at the University of Youngstown, which is in Ohio.
Okay.
He's going to go do so the blessing is he graduated early
Mhm.
with 1 year of football still left.
So he's going to go play somewhere else?
Yep, he's going to play at Youngstown State. He
Okay.
leaves, matter of fact, Monday.
Oh.
Yeah, so he'll be up there training, getting ready for the football season, and be taking classes to get his master's.
Okay.
So we're excited for him, because nobody else in our family got degrees.
Hey, it's crazy because like as a youth and college pastor, man, I struggle sometimes. But the Lord really had to touch my heart, and He says, if you look in the Bible,
Mhm.
point out one person in the Bible that had a degree.
Right.
And it's like, I'm not knocking nobody
Sure.
for going to college,
Sure.
but it's like
Uh-huh.
God can call if the fiery bush can
Uh-huh.
speak to you. If He
Right.
can use that.
Absolutely.
If He could use the prodigal son who was
Absolutely.
in the pig pen.
Yes, he was.
Come on now, like
Right.
he can use whoever it is He wants to use
Absolutely.
and raise them up.
Absolutely.
However He wants to raise them up.
Absolutely. I always tell my church that God specializes in using messy people.
Come on, man.
That He can take a mess and make you a miracle. He
Come
can
on.
take a mess and make you a messenger.
Yeah.
And the Bible says in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 27, that God will take the foolish things of the world
Mhm.
to confound the wise.
Yeah.
And that's what He's done with me. Most people ask me, because I've run in a lot of circles with guys that have degrees in theology and
Yeah.
whatnot, and I respect that. But they always ask me, "Hey, Steele, where did you go to college?" And I tell them, "I went to Neology University."
I've never heard it, but
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I know how to get on my knees and
Yeah.
cry out to God, and He's blessed me, man. How I even got into ministry. My dad pastored here for 30 years,
Okay.
Rhema Christian Center.
I know that. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, he was here for years. Matter of fact, when he passed away this year, my mom decided to shut the church down, and whatnot. But it's interesting, you know. So I grew up in the pews and had no desire to be a pastor. None. Didn't want it because I know two things: you had to be committed and disciplined, and I don't want to have nothing to do with either one of those. But unfortunately, right here in Arizona, probably 1995, 96 or so, I got some major trouble with the law, went to jail, had a bond, got bonded out. But I told God while I was in jail, God, if you get me out of this, I'll serve you. And I'll never forget, 3 seconds later, not 3 minutes, not 30 minutes, 3 seconds later over the intercom, they said, Steele, roll up. And I said, wait a minute, did they just call my name? Wow. They said, yeah, you've been bonded out. Wow. So my mom and dad were waiting for me in the parking lot with my wife. At that time, I had 3 kids. And I have 5 now, 21, 23, 25, 27, and 28. So, and 4 grandkids. Oh, yeah, so I'm in a whole different season. Nevertheless, I looked at my dad, and he said we were able to gather the money. We had to put our house up for collateral to get you out of jail. And he was like, what you gonna do now? And I said, man, I'm ready to be a preacher. I said, I'm ready to accept my calling. I was 24 years old. Wow. And he said, well, this is what we're going to do. He said, we're going to see how this goes because you got these charges and whatnot. We got to get you a lawyer. This is going to probably be a year and a half process. But if you clean my church for a year, I'll let you preach your first message. I was like, bad. Wow. So I cleaned his church for a whole year. And finally, after that year was up, I cleaned it every Monday and every Thursday, because, of course, church is on Sunday. Yeah. So I would go in on Mondays and clean it up. And then church was on Wednesday. So Thursdays, I would go back and re-clean it. And after 1 year, I turned 25 years old that December. And then he said, I'm going to let you preach your first message in January. And so after my 25th birthday, about 3 weeks later, I preached my first message called Roll with the Punches. And I came out of 1 Peter 4:12, thinking not strange, concerning fiery trials. And I talked about how there are going to be times in life where your faith will be on trial. And I talked about how right now I'm in the middle of a trial personally, because I'm still going through that process, you know, and whatnot. But I say all that to say, I started preaching at 25, and here I am 49. So this January will be 24 years that I've been preaching the gospel. And then ironically, January of this year, of next year, I'll be preaching, pastoring for 16 years. Wow. Man. So God is good. So, man, so when you talk about God will flip the script, man, he has flipped the script.
Come on, man.
You know, Genesis 50:20, Joseph told his brothers, but you meant for evil.
God meant for
good. So remember, Romans 8:28 says, and we know all things work together for the good to them that love God and that are called according to his purpose. And it wasn't that I wasn't saved, I just wasn't delivered. Right. You understand what I'm saying?
Come on, man, because people don't understand.
Yeah, I was saved. I mean, I love the Lord, but I was out there doing me. Yeah. And that's why I love Philippians 1:6. It says a work that he's begun, he'll complete it. Man. You know, because we're all a work in progress. Nobody's arrived. I tell my church all the time, none of us are perfect, but let's give a perfect effort when it comes to serving him.
Man, because my favorite dude in the Bible besides Jesus is Paul.
Paul.
That's my guy.
Love Paul.
Because every time Paul gets up there, he will literally listen, I'm not perfect.
Right.
I'm not this. I'm the least of all saints, but he called me.
Yes, sir.
And that's why I've always just loved Paul's heart.
Oh, man, I love Paul.
Man, that's my dude, man. So what is, in being a pastor, what has been the biggest challenge in being in leadership and leading your own church? Like the thing that a lot of people don't see, a lot of people can't see, a lot of people won't see. Like, what is the biggest thing behind closed doors that is probably like the biggest struggle for you in leadership?
And pastoring, you have to have thick skin and a short memory, because there are people that will celebrate you, then they will tolerate you, and then they will cremate you if you let them.
Shoot.
And so I think that, and I talk to pastors all the time. Before coming here, I talked to probably 3 today that I had to encourage, because I'm trying to help them pass the test of disappointment. Right. Because they've had some people that have come in their church or come in their life that they thought would be there for the long haul, that decided to throw the deuces up, if you will. Man. You know, and I think because you got a lot of pastors that experience church hurt. Yeah. You know, you got a lot of people in the congregation in the pews that say they experience church hurt. but they don't think a lot of times that, you know, because we come in there with our cape on, if you will.
Right, yeah,
they
yeah,
think,
yeah.
well, the pastor, he good.
Yeah.
But we hurt too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges is when you thought somebody bought into the vision and decided, you know, to kind of throw the deuces up a little premature. And I'm realizing a lot of it has nothing to do with the pastor or the church. It was maybe something going on in their life personally,
Right.
why they pulled back, if you will.
Right.
But still, that hurts, you know. But when you've been doing it for 15, 16 years, you kind of, unfortunately, you kind of come numb to it to a degree.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, speaking of Bishop Jakes, I asked him one time, what helped you to be able to come the disappointment of people walking out of your life? And he said, when it comes to people, he said, your expectations have to be very minimal, you know, because, you know, people will hurt you in this.
Yeah.
And, you know, and if you're watching this and you're a pastor, you've never been hurt, I got a word for you. Keep living. And that, not just the pastors, but just in general, in life,
man.
You know,
crazy.
Yeah, they're going to have people that's going, look at Joseph, man. I believe, though, that part of your promotion is based on how much betrayal you can take. I mean, look at the betrayal with Joseph and how it elevated him.
Yeah.
Look at the betrayal of even Jesse not inviting David to be a part of the lineup, if you will. Even the prophet Samuel was like, God said it's none of these. Is there another? And then Jesse said, oh, yeah, we got David. He's tending to the sheep. So David was an afterthought, if you will. You know, and then even when David was going to go beat Goliath, one of his brothers told him, go tend to the little sheep. Wow, you know what I'm saying? Wow. I mean, so I believe there are things that you have to go, you got to go through a lot of obscurity. You know, if you want to be great, you got to be able to experience persecution. Look at Jesus.
Yeah, man.
I mean,
ain't nobody experienced like he did.
Yeah, he had Peter in his life, but he also had Judas in his life.
Oh man, Judas was no joke.
No joke. And I believe that in order to be great, you got to be able to pass the Judas test. You know, because, you know, Judas, obviously we know he turned on Jesus. And to the point to where Jesus told them at the table, one of y'all going to turn on me. And everybody's like, is it me? Is it me? In other words, that means everybody in your congregation has the potential.
Man.
I'm not saying everybody's going to do it,
yeah,
but they have the potential. So to answer your question, I think that's been one of the biggest battles that I've had to encounter is people just walking out of your life, you know, and especially people that you've helped and you encouraged and maybe even helped monetarily, and then all of a sudden they just out. But I'm learning this too. Everybody has an expiration date.
Come on now.
So that makes me sleep at night. So
you know, I'm gonna end up taking when I look back and edit this, I'm taking a lot of that. It's about to be like 40-something sermons.
Man, run with it. I always say, but you don't get by revelation, you get by association.
Man, brother, and I love it. And see, like I said, I love good relationships. But one thing I don't like is when people name drop and say, hey, I know this person. I can say, hey, yeah, you know, I know Pastor Steele. He's pretty cool. Or I can say, man, yeah, Pastor Steele, yeah, I know him, cool. But I have no relationship with these people, right? And that's a struggle for me within leadership where people want to know all these people and this and that and other. Like, you have a relationship with T.D. Jakes.
Yes, sir.
And that's been built.
Right.
It's not like you use his name for anything.
No, sir. At the end of the day,
yeah,
I don't do that.
Yeah, and see, and that's a struggle with me because also being in a pastoral position that I am, I think the biggest test is the youth in college because I'm very protective of them, but I always have to check my motives, check my heart. I have to check my behind the door lifestyle, right? Because I'm not perfect.
Who is?
By no means. I've had struggles. I was addicted to pornography and still serving the Lord. You know what I'm saying? I was flirting and doing this and another, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I went to jail. You know what I mean? But I had to just check my motives and just my love for people, man, can also hurt you at the same time. You get used, you get abused.
All of that.
How do you, as a pastor, I don't want to say separate because that sounds bad in a way, but how do you kind of separate that church life from your personal life? And what do you do to kind of like mellow out, chill out, you know, and just keep yourself together?
Proverbs 11:1, King James Version says a false balance is an abomination to God. So I've known guys that have burned out because all they did was church. And that's cool, but it's not cool.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I believe you have to unplug. Like you mentioned a couple of times, I'm on sabbatical.
Yeah.
Which means I have not preached since November the 29th.
Wow.
I'll be back tomorrow for New Year's Eve. Praise God. But I try to at least sneak about 30 days a year where I can just be by myself, with God, where I'm not having to create a sermon and give my courage away to people and whatnot. And then I come back refreshed because I was able to unplug. But to answer your question, I spend a lot of time with my wife, spend a lot of time with my adult children, my grandbabies. We make sure that we unplug a lot. We probably unplug more than most pastors.
Okay.
We take a lot of time off. We vacation together. We went to Mexico together.
Oh, wow.
We went to San Diego together. We went to Las Vegas together. You know what I'm saying? And so, because, being a PK, there's some advantages I had. Watching my dad pastor for 30 years, my dad had no balance.
Wow.
It was just church, 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 church. I mean, we had Sunday school at 10 in the morning. Then church was at 12. Then we came back at 7. And people have even asked me in the last 15, 16 years, would you ever start a Sunday night service? I said, absolutely not. Because at the end of the day, I want people to have a life outside of church. So we do 9 and we do 11. That 11's over at 12:30. And we're done for the day. And if you want to catch me on Sunday night, you can catch me on AZTV at 8:30 p.m. That's our Sunday night.
Come on. And that's encouraging because it's funny. I was so before I was at the Methodist Church, I was at Pilgrim Rest for like 10 plus years.
Got it.
So I was under Pastor Chad. I was under Bishop Rick. I'm not Bishop Rick. Bishop Thomas. There was one thing that Bishop Thomas said in that pulpit where it was after, I think, Fresh Rain or something like that.
Okay.
Right. He had this Caucasian preacher, but he was a short guy. He was pretty cool. He said that they, after church that night, you guys take the guest pastors out to eat and everything.
Right.
He said this pastor kept talking about the Bible, and Bishop was like, I don't want to hear anything about the Bible.
Right. It's time to unplug.
Yeah, and at the time I was like, I didn't get it, but I get it now.
Yeah, now
it's
you
like,
get it. Yeah.
It's like you gotta, when I'm sitting down at the table and I'm eating,
Right.
There's moments where I don't really want to pray for somebody.
Got it.
There's moments that and it's not taking it's not saying I don't want to serve God at that moment.
Right.
But there's a part of me that I've given out
right
so much.
So good. That's good.
Right. To where it's like, give me a moment to just.
Can we talk about sports?
Come on, brother.
Can we talk about politics?
Come on.
How's your family? How's your kids? What are some of their hobbies? There's other things that we can talk about except the Bible.
Come on, man.
Now, if you want to talk Bible, we can talk Bible. I can talk Bible with anybody. You understand? I got the scripture, the address, the whole nine. You understand what I'm saying? But at the same time, as much as I love God, I understand in order for me to be fresh for the people, you have to unplug.
Right.
You have to have other hobbies. You have to have other interests.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I spend a lot of time, like today, me and my wife got some breakfast because we're empty nesters.
Yeah.
And after we ate breakfast, she was like, you want to go see 2 of the grandbabies? I'm like, let's go. So she called. We were spent a couple hours over there, had a blast with them. So I believe that in order to be able to outlast the enemy and yourself.
Come on.
You have to have balance. You have to have balance. You got to learn how to unplug and have a life outside of church.
Right. And I think that's why you have associate pastors, right?
Absolutely, we do.
You have, and this is one thing that I want people, and I love the fact that we're able to do this because I need people to understand this. Just because a pastor has associate pastors and you can't get to him directly, doesn't mean he's Hollywood. It's just that there's some things that he, as a leader, doesn't need to be dealing with.
Absolutely.
There's other people in position, like when it comes to youth in college, I'm going to deal with that. Right. But I know my pastor, so he's like, man, if somebody calls me and this and that and other, blah, blah, blah. But there's some times where you're like, hey, can you take care of it? I'm like, yeah, I got you. You know what I mean? But then I also, because the first ministry is my home, which is my wife, and which is my son, which is our home life.
Absolutely.
Now, if my home life's not together, I have no business going to preach in somebody's pulpit.
You're absolutely
and
right.
People don't understand it. So when I say I'm at home and, hey, I'll hit you back later or whatever, it's not the fact that I'm ignoring you, but I'm ignoring you for that moment.
Got it, for that moment. Exactly.
My wife and my son, they need my attention.
Right.
And if I'm drained, if I have nothing else to give to them, don't think for a second that I have everything to give to you.
Man, that's so good.
You feel what I'm saying?
I agree because, I've learned this. You cannot allow Satan to set your schedule.
Come on, man.
You'll be running, and I'll give you a good story. When my church was probably 1 year old, I had a guy that I just put over my men's ministry, and he ministered one time, and then he resigned. and that hurt me. So I got in the car because he didn't live that far from me, and I was speeding to get to his house to be like, man, why are you resigning? I just repositioned you. You did a great job with the men, and after one Saturday, you're resigning. So as I'm driving to his house, I'm speeding because I'm a young pastor and I'm passionate and I'm a different pastor because I love everybody and everybody should love me. And why would you resign? So I get to his house, but before I got to his house, I almost got in a car wreck. And God spoke to me then, like, you need to calm down. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just almost got in a car wreck trying to get to somebody that's already made up their mind that they're done.
Wow.
And then even when I got to the house to try to convince him otherwise, he was like, no, I'm done. I'm not wired for this. But I'm like, man, you asked to be repositioned from one position to this, and you did an excellent job. We had 100 and something men in there, and you did a great job pouring into them, and now you're resigning after one Saturday. And he was like, I'm done. He's like, and I'm leaving the church. And I'm like, why? He's just like, and I come to find out it had nothing to do with the church. It had something to do that was going on in his life personally that he didn't want to be transparent about. So as a pastor, that was probably one of the first disappointments that I experienced, is jumping in my car. So now I've learned that, you know what, you might be going to voicemail, and I'll get to you when I get to you. You know, or we might have one of the associates get to you, or one of our ministers, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Because they said as a pastor, you can only effectively pastor 50 to 100 people. After that, you have to have other people in place. You know what I'm saying? That can help take on some of that responsibility. And that's why even Jethro kind of went off on Moses in the Bible and told him, this is not good what you're doing. You're up to sundown, the sun, you know, and he said, you need to get some other people to help you so we can get the burden off of you. You know, because ministry can be a burden and a blessing. You know what I'm saying? But it's important to delegate. I'm big about delegating.
I see, because your daughter, I think, is the one that got back to me. So his family works for him. And again, nobody's saying that Pastor Steele, Bishop Tom, anybody like that, Pastor Mackey now, who's at Pilgrim Rest, they're not Hollywood, but it's more or less, you know, they have to, just like they look out for you, they have to look out for them as well.
Have to.
You know, and it's that important. And one thing, you know, before we end I've been so adamant that the Lord has been heavy with me with this, is that when you go to a hospital, you have these different areas, right? You have the surgery, inpatient, outpatient. You have people that live at the hospital who are in the people who are, what do you call them? The admitted to the hospital. You have the doctors, you have the nurses, but these doctors and nurses, they have problems as well. But then there's one unit that people don't ever speak about, but every church has. Do you know what it is?
I don't. I'm curious to hear this.
The psych unit.
Oh, the psych. Yeah, you don't hear a whole lot.
No.
And that's what believe it or not, that's what I did before I became a pastor. I worked on psych units. I was a psychiatric tech. But go ahead. So, and here's why I say that every church has a psych unit, because there's people in that pulpit who are sick physically, sick mentally, and they're coming to the hospital, aka the church, and they need something. But there's also that unit where these people are crazy. They're out of their minds. They have no balance. They're struggling in life. They have mental issues. They don't know how to handle this, because nobody showed them how to handle depression. Nobody showed them how to handle disappointment. Nobody showed them. And what a lot of people don't realize is, in that same unit are the pastors of the church. In that same unit are the first ladies. Because, not saying that these people are bad, it's just that nobody showed them how to deal with heartbreak. Nobody showed them how to deal with disappointment. You had somebody in your corner that helped you deal with your disappointment. But there was nobody to help them. So you see pastors committing suicide. You see pastors quitting. You see pastors stepping down. And I'm very adamant on mental health in the Black church. Why? Because when you're younger, you have a lot of parents, 85% of the household telling you, 85% of a Black household telling you, you don't need to go, there's nothing wrong with you, you need to snap out of this, stop your crying, stop crying, stop this, stop that. No, you better stop all them tears. No, if a person is hurting, they're hurting. If a person is crying, they're crying. And people are not teaching on
how to deal with your mental issues. Jesus can do it
Right.
all, but also God laid in a person's spirit how to be a doctor. God made into a
Right.
person's spirit how to be a lawyer, teacher, a provider, this and that, another.
Wow.
So when we sit down, there's nothing wrong with going to see a counselor.
At all.
There's nothing going on. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Right.
that's my biggest thing. So to sit down and talk to you as a leader,
Right.
it wasn't just to get the interview so people can hear, but it was also for me to actually get a chance to sit down and talk with a big leader in the community.
Got
and
it.
to understand where your head was at when it came to mental health in a black church.
Right.
How you deal with stuff on a personal level.
Right.
Because I don't ever want to see churches crashing down because
Right.
somebody didn't teach you how to do
Exactly.
something, or because you feel like
Right.
sitting down with the counselor
Right.
makes you look a certain way.
Listen, and that's where black people, especially, we need to be more vulnerable.
Right.
There's a counselor I see in Scottsdale. His name is Dr. Bob. I've been going to him since 2011. So we're getting ready to go into 2021. So that means I'm coming up on a decade.
Right.
Now, see, what a lot of people don't know is that I left my dad's church 20 years ago. And people thought I was crazy because they're like, wait a minute, you're his successor. You're going to take the mantle, so on and so forth. I was 27 years old and I left because I just felt like there was more in me. And that more would have not come out under my dad's ministry.
Right.
So I made a decision back in 2000, June, to leave. Got under a white pastor, and people thought I lost my mind. And I'll be honest with you, I thought I lost my mind too. You know, but it's interesting because I walked in this church on a Wednesday night, and I told my wife in the parking lot, because I noticed it was all white people getting out of their cars and going in. And I said, well, this is where we're supposed to be. God got to confirm this tonight. Because I'm not racist, but I've never worshiped with white people. Went to school with them, hung out with them, but never worshiped, because the worship is different, if you will, culturally. So I get in there, and this lady, white lady, turns around, looks at me during praise and worship on a Wednesday night. Now, that was already different, because black church didn't do worship on Wednesday night. You got right to the Bible.
Right.
So that was already a red flag. They're doing worship on Wednesday.
It's like, all right,
It's,
thank the Lord.
You're right. I'm like, supposed to do worship on Sunday, because you got a different mindset. 27 years old, coming from a all black church, my dad's church.
Right.
And that lady looked at me. She said, young man, I don't know who you are, but God told me to tell you that you are at the right place at the right time to get what you need. And that messed me up. And my wife said, well, baby, you just told me in the parking lot that God got to confirm it. I said, she's confirming it.
Wow.
So I sat in that church for 5 years and learned a lot, you know. And it's interesting because that black pastor told me, that white pastor, he said, black men, you guys are the best preachers on the planet. He said, when it comes to delivering a message, he says, as a white pastors, we can't touch you guys. He said, but what we outdo you is with methods. So he said, you guys have the message, but you guys need to start tweaking your methods, because you guys got a message. And back then, I'm 27, so I'm like, what's a method? And then that's what he began to tell me about delegation, hiring staff, you know, making sure that you're not hands-on with everything,
Right.
you know, and so on and so forth. And then he hired me and let me work for him full-time for 4.5 years.
Wow.
So I was able to really learn ministry.
Wow.
And so when people look at Kingdom now, thousands of people, millions of dollars come in every year, they're like, did you see this coming? I'm like, absolutely, because I went and exposed myself to that.
Wow.
And so I got a chance to see a church that was a 5-star church, you know what I'm saying? And my point in bringing that all up is that they were big about mental health.
Right.
They're big about, hey, you need to be vulnerable enough to, if maybe you might have a mental illness, maybe there's something going on in your psyche, maybe you need to go see a counselor. And they made it, what's the word? They made it okay in white church to go sit down with a counselor and maybe talk about your mental illness or whatever issues you might be having. And it might not even be a mental illness. It might be something that happened in your childhood that you just haven't been able to shake.
Wow,
like molestation, you weren't able to shake, you know, maybe you got whooped too much.
That's a lot of us,
you know, I came up in that dispensation with extension cords and branches.
My grandpa said, switches. Go get a switch. Right. And after he whooped you, he set it right on that thing so you can see it. I'd be like,
and then you wake up the next day or wake up later that night, you thought it was the next day. I mean, but you got some good sleep though.
Yeah,
you know,
man.
they
whooped you straight to get some good sleep.
You better believe it. So, but I say all that to say that I'm big about, you know, going and sitting down with somebody. Matter of fact, because I'll never forget, me and my wife hit a wall in our marriage in 2011, and trying to balance marriage and ministry is tough.
Yeah.
And she said, honey, we need to go sit down with somebody because our marriage is not going well. And I was in denial, like, we good. She like, honey, you're all about the church and not about me.
Man.
She said, you have no balance. We need to go sit down with somebody. She said, even the kids are like, dad doesn't even spend time with us because I'm just all about the church and the people. And when I sat down with the counselor, he blessed me, man. And it's crazy because he told me to pray. He said, pray. And I prayed and I came back up. He said, what did God say? I said, man, he didn't say nothing. He said, you didn't pray long enough. He said, I want you to pray again. I put my head down, started praying. About 2-3 minutes went by, and I said, well, the Lord is saying da 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 da. And then he gave me his notepad, and everything that the Lord had told me in that little 2-3 minutes, he already wrote it down.
Wow. So he was.
That's when I said, oh, he's the real, and that's why I go to Bob to this day, 10 years later.
Wow.
Because I'm not just going to be sitting with anybody. You understand what I'm saying?
Man.
Especially with being a pastor and spilling my guts. You can't do that with everybody.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because we're human too.
Oh, come
You
on.
know what
brother.
I'm saying?
You crossed that line. Hold on. Let me take this off. Don't play, brother.
Right.
Don't play.
I tell my church all the time, don't pray for Pastor Steele. Pray for Reggie. You know what I'm
Come
saying?
on, brother.
Pastor Steele going to be good.
Yeah.
Make sure you get a word on Wednesday night, Sunday morning, but keep Reggie lifted up.
Man.
We want to keep him dead. You understand what I'm saying?
Come on.
So I say all that to say that Reggie, not Pastor Steele, has to go sit down and be vulnerable enough and be transparent and talk to my shrink, if you will.
Yeah.
So he can help me navigate through some things.
Man, because you know what? Bishop, my pastor, Bishop Regair, and the reason why I mention him because this man is the same. He's been the same.
Yep.
And I'm not saying he's been at the same level. He's just been the same person.
Got it.
Doesn't care about titles.
Right.
He honors the position.
Sure.
But and that's why I get that concept from where I'm not putting nobody on a pedestal.
Sure.
Because just because you're a pastor and I may be a business person, that don't make us no bigger than each
God
other.
sees us equal.
It's just we're
Across
right
the
here.
board.
We're just doing certain things.
Sure.
Or whatever. So he got up on the stage, man, and he said, you know what? When we come to church, you get Bishop. And Bishop's people gonna get saved, people gonna get delivered, and this and that and other.
Right.
But when I go home, I'm Rick.
Right.
And Deborah got to deal with Rick.
Got it. Exactly.
And so when I go home, when I'm in church, I'm, Darnell, I'm a youth college pastor, soon to be youth college and young adult pastor and this and that.
Right.
But when I go home, I'm Darnell.
Right. Exactly.
And Carrie, my wife, has to deal with Darnell.
Right.
Everything that comes with Darnell.
Right.
And I ain't the cleanest person sometimes.
I got you.
I ain't the, you know what I mean? And so, but one thing I can say about wives when it comes to ministry is they see more than what we see.
Oh, man.
Because they're sitting back. They're like
something else. Yeah,
and so my wife will be like, I don't like that person, and will not hesitate to. I don't like that person. And she will she will use some select words.
Got it.
God is good.
Their discernment is on another level.
Come on, but I love it because it takes a certain person to be with people like us.
Right.
Because you can't just be dating. I mean, of course, as a man, you have no problem getting a woman. Because there's always a woman there.
Got it.
As a pastor, you definitely don't have a problem because women want that's inside of you.
Got it.
So it's like the women that God has chosen for us to have.
Right.
They've been prepared and built up to handle what we look past.
Absolutely.
So
true, because at the end of the day, the assignment that's on our lives, it takes a right woman to be able to help complement and complete who you are.
Yeah.
And again, being at that, they have to be ambidextrous because you're their pastor, you're their husband and their boss.
Come on.
And they got to be able to know who's speaking, and like one time we got home and she's like, I'm mad at you. And she said, well, you corrected me at church, and it was during the business hours, not on a Sunday or Wednesday. Yeah. And I'm like, baby, I was correcting you as your boss. I'm your boss. And I didn't like that idea. Put that idea on the shelf.
Right.
We'll revisit it next year.
Right.
Or maybe due season, or maybe not at all.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I'm running the ship. You know what I'm saying? That's not to say your opinion doesn't matter, because it does.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't grab my spirit, we're not going to do it. Let's go. We still going to the movies, right? Yeah.
We still got some other business to handle tonight at the house, right?
Absolutely.
Come on.
Hallelujah.
Come on, brother.
Praise the Lord. So at the end of the day, You know, and the blessing is we've been together 30 years. So
Okay.
we have an understanding. We've been married 28, but together 30.
Okay.
We even count the fornicating years. You know what I'm saying?
Come on, I love it.
You know
I
what
love
I'm
it,
saying?
brother. I love
We've
it.
been together since high school.
Yeah.
So we've been able to learn each other. Thank God we've had 3 decades and 5 kids later to do that. So we have a rhythm.
Right.
And that's not to say that doesn't get off, because it does, because we're wired different. She's a woman, I'm a man.
Yeah.
So we might see things entirely different.
Right.
But at the same time, we're not going to allow that to stop us from going to get some dinner or catching a movie.
Come on.
You know, or handling some bedroom stuff.
Come on, man.
You know what I'm saying?
That brings us closer to the Lord.
Hallelujah. Because that even speaks of his goodness.
Come on now.
When you're married.
Come on, brother. People don't understand. I be at church and I'll be so like transparent. Pastor was like, "Hey, so how was it at house? I mean, how was it at the house? Oh, she gave it up. We're good."
Listen, that's part of it. That's
Come
part
on,
of the
brother.
ministry, you know. You know, and so yeah, man. But this has been great, man. I know we've covered a gamut of things.
Yes.
And I pray people will bless.
Man, brother, I'm honored. I'm honored for it, man. I know that we went, a long time, but
Yes,
I'm thankful that you came by. You know, you poured your heart out. You were vulnerable here in this seat, man, and
Right.
you were just very transparent, man.
Appreciate
and I hope
that.
that we can do this again
Yeah,
and even stay
love to.
connected, man.
Absolutely.
So if people want to get in contact with your church, get in contact with you, come to your services, tell the people your information.
Yeah,
man.
you can catch us on my Facebook Live under Reginald Steele. We're Wednesdays at 7 p.m. and then Sundays at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Also, you can catch us on YouTube as well, and kingdom.church is our website. Would love for you to go and check that out. And you can even catch our services on kingdom.church as well. And so, and we're at 11640 North 19th Avenue. And that's on between Cactus and Peoria. Would love for you to come and visit one day.
Thank you so much. Well, again, Pastor Steele, man, I appreciate you coming
Absolutely.
through, man. And definitely,
Thank you
man,
for having me.
No, thank you for being here, man. And we will definitely be seeing you soon, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Yes, sir.
All right.